Howdy folks, hope you've all had a good weekend, at least so far, and, well, unless you've been living under a rock, it can't have escaped your notice that Diablo 4 was at a test weekend. Is it any good? Well, the short answer is yes. The long answer is a lot longer. So, well, let's have a stab at giving you the long answer. First of all, let's get the intro out of the way. Oh no, we appear to be stuck in the first chapter of Red Dead Redemption 2. We're lost in the middle of the forest of death and blood. The weather's closing in. Our horse, in common with most horses, is an absolute idiot. Hears a spooky noise, runs off, gets itself trouted, and now we're stuck in the middle of the forest of death and blood with the weather closing in and we don't have a horse. Find ourselves a cave. Oh, it's a bit cold. Might be about to freeze to death. Although, I am a sorcerer and I could just conjure some fire, but no, the intro has to happen. Oh, hang on, what's this? Doesn't look good. Doesn't look good at all. In fact, that looks like the definition of the opposite of good. But oh, hang on, wait, no, was it just a dream? Who can say? Probably not. Found a deserted town in the mountains. Yep, we're definitely playing Red Dead Redemption 2. Hang on a second. Voices. Maybe this place isn't quite as deserted as we may have first been led to believe. Villagers have got themselves a crazy guy lost in the storm. He's delirious, lashing out and biting everybody. The crazy guy reckons there's demons in the ruins just to the north of the town. You know what? He might not be wrong. The villagers want me to clear it out for them. No problem. I've got this. Sort out those ruins for you. They don't have any money to pay me, but they can sort me out with a good hot meal and a place to sleep for the night. Hang on a minute. They've drugged my drink. Oh, those sneaky fucking Russians. Next thing I know, they're fitting me up for some kind of sacrifice. Let's go to the mountains for the weekend, she said. It'll be fine, she said. We'll get some exercise and fresh air, she said. Hooray! Crazy bloke to the rescue. Not actually as crazy as the villagers may have led me to believe. It turns out they just drugged him the same way they'd done me and were fitting him up for a sacrifice too. So, nothing else to be done but kill everybody, I suppose. Oh yeah, look at that. Fire. Why was I freezing to death in the mountains again? Details. You were blessed like us now. What are you talking about, crazy woman? Oh yeah, that's right. They fed me something when they were setting me up for a sacrifice in that shithole of a barn. Something that gives me a connection to the demon responsible for all of this. Something that allows me to experience a vision of exactly what it was that occurred in this podunk shithole of a town that led to this. I warn you, this is pretty nasty.
Shameful. Our Father has granted you a path to salvation. And yet, you stray from it at every opportunity. You drink and gamble. You covet and steal. Shameful.
Sin is their birthright. My children. The lords of hell are coming to devour our world. Salvation lies not in the light, but in you. The faith has taught you to deny your heart's desire and turned you into a prisoner within yourself. Break the chains. and discover who you were meant to be. Break the chains and be beautiful in sin.
Resist! Resist her temptation! Vani, it's me. I brought your child into this world.
Go to the dry steps and continue your preparations. Now, our true work begins.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to Diablo 4. I'm pretty sure most of you probably already know whether or not you're going to be playing this. In fact, many of you probably already have. For those of you who haven't, the only thing that you really want to know is, does it live up to the standards set by, in particular, Diablo 2, but also Diablo 3 and its expansion packs? And the short answer is, oh hell yes. Very much so. Once again, the long answer is a little bit longer. You'll probably be happy to hear that Blizzard haven't messed around with the formula. It's still Diablo. It's still a dungeon crawl, loot collecting, hack and slash, kind of isometric, sort of 3D top-down Diablo. You know, they haven't messed around with that. What they have done is kind of streamline a lot of the stuff that was honestly just kind of annoying about Diablo 2 and Diablo 3. Like, for example, no more scrolls of town portal. If you've unlocked a waypoint, you can just teleport straight to any of your unlocked waypoints from the map. You don't need any scrolls. It's a similar deal with identifying magic items. You don't need to take them to Deckard Cain to have a shufty at them and tell you exactly what it is. You don't need to carry scrolls of identify around. You kill the monsters, you loot the gear, you can equip it straight away without having to identify it. You can just look at it and see what it is and what it does. There's all kinds of examples of this sort of thing. It's still Diablo, it's had the rough edges sanded down a little bit. Another example of streamlining in Diablo 4 that I heartily approve of, particularly when you're playing a sorcerer, is, well, if you've played the other Diablo games, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Let's say you've invested heavily into your lightning spells because, quite frankly, they're just a little bit overpowered. Chain lightning absolutely rules. You've been carving down waves of enemies for hours, just cruising through almost on autopilot, and then you come across a boss that needs to be killed, and he's completely immune to your lightning spells. And honestly, Blizzard have been doing this for so long. Back in World of Warcraft, if you were raiding Molten Core as a mage, you were a frost mage, because basically everything in there was immune to all of your fire spells. Well, of course they are, Jingles. They're fire elementals. Why should they take damage from fire? Well, I'm made of flesh and blood, and I'm not immune to getting kicked in the teeth, so yeah, that's a thing. Or it was a thing in just about every other Blizzard game that's ever been made where you use magic, but not in Diablo 4. Elemental resistance is a thing, and I'm sure certain enemies have heightened resistances to certain schools of magic, but I've played all the way up to level 25, I've basically completed the beta weekend, and I have yet to come across a single enemy who is outright immune to any of the schools of magic that I'm using at any one particular time. But here's the thing, once again, talking about Blizzard streamlining things, making things more accessible, or less of a pain in the arse. Even if I had come across, for example, a dungeon end boss who was 100% immune to all of the lightning spells that I've been using up to that point, or fire spells, or frost spells, or whatever, it, well, doesn't really matter that much. I mean, in the short term, yes, he's going to kill you. There's no getting around that, because you're not going to be able to do any damage to him, or it, whatever. I'm being inclusive here. But if that was the case, and in Diablo 4 it isn't, but if it had been, it still wouldn't have been that big of a deal, because aside from getting your arse handed to you in the short term and then respawning outside the dungeon, all you have to do is retrain your ability points. You don't have to go and see a trainer, you don't have to be in a town, you can do it anywhere, anytime you want, and all it costs you is a bit of gold. It costs pennies. It's basically, what's that? Your tactics aren't working? Change your tactics. Here you go, try again. Similarly, if, for example, you're playing a barbarian, and you've put all of your skill points into axes, and then a really nice two-handed sword drops, and you think, shit. Well, it's fine. Just retrain your ability points. Same deal if you're playing a rogue, and you've been using bows, and then a legendary set of daggers drops. Just retrain your ability points to specialise in daggers. They've taken the ball ache out of it all. Now, this is probably the point where, how can I put this politely? If you're of a certain age, right, if you can remember playing the original Diablo, this is probably the point where you've put your pipe down, you're leaning back in your chair, you're stroking your beard, and you're thinking to yourself, so what you're saying here, Jingles, is they've dumbed it down for Generation Z, yeah? And while I can see why you kind of might think that, they really haven't. In fact, they may have even gone just a little bit too far in the other direction. Despite all this talk of streamlining things, because they've added an awful lot of new systems into the game. For example, when you reach, I can't remember if it's level 10 or level 15, the class that you're playing gets to unlock a special ability. Now, if you're playing a sorcerer, that special ability is enchantments. So, for example, let's say you like channeling those fire spells. It will then give you the option to unlock an enchantment, so you do 20% more damage when you're channeling fire spells. If you play as a barbarian, and you like using two-handed axes, you unlock a new system called expertise, where the more you use a particular type of weapon, the better you get at using that particular type of weapon. Increased crit chance, better hit rate, faster weapon swings, that sort of thing. Okay, but what happens if I'm merrily swinging away, building up expertise with my two-handed axe, and then a legendary two-handed sword drops? Well, then you start building up expertise with two-handed swords. And if later on an even better two-handed axe drops, you equip it and you just go right back to where you left off with the same amount of expertise that you'd already accumulated in two-handed axes. This is one of the new systems that they've introduced. And on its own, it's pretty straightforward. There's nothing terribly complicated about it. But it's not the only new system they've introduced. There's alchemy. Gem crafting's different. All kinds of things are subtly different. Improved, but different. The thing is, there's a lot of them. And it can be kind of difficult to keep track of all of the new stuff. They don't drown you with all this new information at once, by the way. I mean, they do spread it out as you level up, but it still can be kind of maybe a little bit overwhelming if you're of a certain age. I'm sure the kids will take to it like a duck to water. But it's something to be aware of. I mean, it's Diablo. They haven't messed with the formula. They've streamlined a lot of stuff, but they've added a lot of new stuff as well. Some of it straight out of World of Warcraft. They've taken some of the stuff that works quite well in World of Warcraft and they've just dumped it straight into Diablo 4. World bosses, for example. So for those of you who don't know what those are, a world boss in World of Warcraft is a, raid boss out in the world. Just wandering around. You don't have to go into a dungeon or a raid in order to find them. They're just there, out in the world. And once a week, you can get a group of random players together and go and kick its arse. And if you get lucky with the loot roll, get yourself some epic gear. They've got exactly the same thing in Diablo 4 now. Weekly world bosses that anybody can turn up and help to kill. Oh yeah, while we're on that subject, Blizzard have never been shy about stealing other people's good ideas. Does anybody remember Warhammer Online? Most of you probably don't. It didn't do very well. But it had a great sense of humour, and it had some very good ideas. Warhammer Online was the game that introduced us to public quests, and they have them in Diablo 4. A public quest is basically an event that's happening in the world, and they're scattered all over the map. And you can be wandering around. I've seen these in Final Fantasy XIV as well. And a thing is happening, and anybody who's wandering by can choose to dip in and help out, and anybody who does receives credit and gets a share of the rewards. They've got those in Diablo 4 now as well. There's so much new stuff in Diablo 4, even though, if I'm being completely honest, most of it isn't actually new. It's just stuff that they've lifted out of other successful Blizzard games, or other games that maybe weren't successful but had good ideas, like Warhammer Online. It really is jam-packed full of features. Can be a little overwhelming at first. It's Diablo, just turned up to 11. It is fun though. I mean, there's no shortage of things to do. Speaking of things to do, while I appreciate that a lot of people don't really play Diablo for the story, they just want to get to maximum level so they can start farming Paragon levels and do the dungeons in the hardest way possible to get the best possible loot. I mean, and that is absolutely an option. That's right here in Diablo 4 as well. But the story in Diablo 4 has always been a compelling part of the experience. And while the only thing that's available in Diablo 4 at the moment is the first act, the story does not disappoint. If I had to say I have one criticism of the story, because it is exceptionally well voice acted, by the way. You may recognise some of the voices. I did, but I can't remember the guy's name. He was in The Witch and Game of Thrones. He's one of the Ironborn. I should probably go and look this up afterwards. But anyway, the story. I'm going to try to keep this spoiler free. Actually, I will keep this spoiler free. I mean, it's Diablo. It's all doom and gloom and great evil and oh no, the world's in danger and blah 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 and so on and so on and so on. However, I don't know if you've noticed, but Blizzard only ever really seems to tell one story every time. In every game they write. Well, every fantasy game they write. By which I mean World of Warcraft and Diablo. And that story is, welcome to the new game, or the new expansion, you know, whatever. I know you thought that the bad guy that you defeated in the previous game, or expansion, was the be-all and end-all. Haha! Sucker! They were a mere puppet. I was the one pulling the strings. I'm the big bad now. Every damn time. Blizzard have been pulling this shit in World of Warcraft with every expansion for the last 15 years, and it's really starting to get tired. And they've kind of been doing it in Diablo too. I mean, in the original Diablo, you had the demons and you had the angels, and the demons were the bad guys and the angels were the good guys. And then subsequent Diablo games roll out, and it turns out that maybe these angels aren't actually the good guys. They seem a bit strict. Oh no, they're just using humanity as pawns in their war against the forces of hell. But that's alright. You can always rely on the Haradrim to look after you. And I'm just saying, in Diablo 4, and I haven't confirmed this yet, but I'm seeing hints, okay? I've only played the first act, that's all that's available. I'm just saying, there are hints that maybe we shouldn't be trusting the Haradrim either, and maybe these demons aren't quite as bad as they've all been made out to be. Oh, getting a bit edgy there, Blizzard. No, it's not big, it's not clever, and it's not original, because it's the same bait and switch they've been doing with every fantasy game release and expansion that they've done for the last 15 years. And again, I'm entirely happy to be proven wrong on this one, but I don't think I am. They're doing it again. We shall see. And I don't really mind that much, because while I do like playing the Diablo games for the story, you can only really play through the story once. And then you're at maximum level, and you're grinding through the Paragon levels, and you're doing dungeons in the hardest way possible in order to get the best possible loot. And that, at its heart, is really what Diablo has always been about. It's always been about getting new stuff and new things. And Diablo 4 in that respect does not disappoint. It's more of the same, just turned up to 11, streamlined, rough edges sanded off, minus all of the annoying bits. Loads of new systems, changes to existing systems, maybe too many, but honestly, it's the kind of thing that might just be confusing for the first couple of days that you're playing, and then you'll be used to it. It'll all be second nature, and you'll be wondering just what the hell it was I was complaining about in the first place. Blizzard are on to another winner here. And honestly, the only way they could conceivably screw things up at this point is if they were to suddenly, on release, start aggressively monetizing the shit out of everything, throw in an exploitative premium shop, and nerf the rate of experience game, turning the whole experience into a horrible slog of a grindfest in order to sell you premium experience boosters. And they could still do that. But let's hope not. Diablo 4. It's Diablo. Turned up to 11. And it's been a lot of fun. Certainly took my mind off some bad news this weekend. In the meantime, I hope you enjoyed the video. I hope you're all having a great rest of the weekend. And as always, take care. And I'll catch you next time.